Hey, this is Regina White Favors with a new series. The series is titled What Do You Bring to the Table? And it is part of the Overcoming Rebound Relationships curriculum and then also the Toxic Encounters books. And you can find those tabs marked as rebounding and also toxic encounter books on my website, reginawhitefavors.com. So, this particular series I thought is very interesting because there's this sort of ongoing social media discussion concerning men asking women what do they bring to the table, and it segues into conversations about submission and how most men want a submissive wife or partner. They're not always inclined to transition the individual into becoming a wife, but they want the individual or the woman to be submissive. And so it has transitioned into those types of discussions of submission and also tradition, that they want a traditional wife. And many people define tradition or a traditional wife as someone who cooks and cleans and stays at the house. They tend to be a housekeeper, homekeeper, a housewife. But I noticed that there's an irony to the discussion about what do they bring to the table, because most men who ask that question tend to label themselves or categorize themselves as alpha men, and they still, when a woman responds with the fact that she makes a certain income or she works a certain job or she has education, the men will say, well, that's not important to alpha men, right? Or that's not important to men just in general. And the irony that I find very interesting is that these men want a traditional submissive wife, but they also want her to work. They don't want the 50s, 40s, 50s type of wives who stayed home where the man went out and he was the breadwinner. What they want is still the woman to work and still the woman to be able to tend to the home, tend to the husband in a very traditional way, not have any true independence or anything like that. But when a woman says, well, she makes a certain amount of money or she has education, they sort of mock and scorn and look down on that. So I've been thinking about this series for a good while and just kind of listening to discussions and being sort of turned off by those discussions, as well as wondering, I mean, do people really know what they want? The most important thing that people need to understand is that you are always 100% responsible for yourself. So that means you need to do all that you need to do to ensure that you establish you. Just because someone decides to get an education or make a lot of money doesn't mean that they think that person is better than you. That's what you're supposed to do as an adult. You're supposed to leave your parents' home, get a job, go to school, get your own apartment, get a house, get a car, pay bills. That's what you're supposed to do. And so this discussion about what do you bring to the table is something that I want to explore. I don't know if I'm going to turn it into a script or something, but I have created a workbook companion that I'm going to introduce you to in a few slides. So this is what do you bring to the table, and this is preparing your table for engagement. And your table for engagement depends on where you are in your development. If you are preparing your table for engagement, if you are in your 30s or your 40s, well, it is, you've likely already received your education or completed your education, and so now you are already establishing yourself. So now you are at a 30s mindset, or if you're in your 40s, you're at a 40s mindset. So how you perceive the world and how you engage with another person is going to be a lot different than the person who is in their 20s, right? So preparing your table means whatever it means in terms of the particular topics we're going to discuss, but also just your table in terms of your mindset. your mentality about relationships, about relationship building. If you're the type of person who quits relationships after a certain time and you don't have a record of staying in a relationship longer than 6 months, that is your table. And so you're going to have to really address that part of your um, emotional development. So this is, what do you bring to the table? Preparing your table for engagement. So the curriculum is based upon the research I did for rebounding and rebound relationships. And that research you can find under the rebounding tab. And the rebound relationship research focuses on understanding the table. So this is the table that we're at as two partners. One of the partners is a rebound, and the other partner is a member of a core relationship. And so when you are engaging in relationships, especially romantically, and you don't know that the partner is already engaged with someone else, and that can be as in marriage, or it can be just in a long-term relationship, it's time to really think about what's going on with the table that you're sitting at. So that's understanding the table. And then the Toxic Encounters books um, do derive from that research. And so I go over that at the end of the presentation here. But it's Overcoming Rebound Relationships curriculum, and it is when you need to leave the table. So the three books, three titles under the series, the Bait, Hook, and Switch series, focus on rebound relationships, why people pursue them, focuses on also adult attachment, and then encourages the reader to go no contact. So this is the curriculum in addition to the workbook companion. So here's the workbook companion. What do you bring to the table? This is the series, and then this is taking many of the ideas that I have in this presentation and putting it into book form. So it's about 130 pages, and it is available on Amazon. What is your financial table is one of those types of questions that we really do need to ask ourselves um, repeatedly, consistently, persistently. It is not something that we say, okay, I just want to save some money or I want to build an emergency fund. That's the start of a financial table. That is not the end all be all. Say, for instance, you set the financial table to say 3 months worth of emergency fund, whatever that dollar figure is. So that dollar figure is based upon what you make every month and based upon the type of emergency. So you would have to define the emergency. If the emergency is to make sure that you have your rent for the next month now, right? Or your rent for the next 2 or 3 months now, just in case there's a problem with your hours on your job, right? Okay, then you're going to take a certain amount out of your paycheck every paycheck, put it off to the side, and then by the end of 3 months, you will have at least your first month extra rent. That means that your financial table is going to have boundaries. It's going to have standards, boundaries, and expectations. So, for example, if your rent is $1,200 and you're trying to save 1,200 times three for 3 months, 3,600, and then you manage at the end of the first 3 months to save that 1,200, and then another 3 months you save another 1,200, etc., then when someone comes to you and asks you for some money, you don't have it. Because if that's the goal, if that is your financial table to establish a 3 month savings, emergency savings, which represents your rent, then you don't have it. Because anything could happen between the time that you start that savings goal and the time you save. And so anyone who's coming to you and asking you for money, you may have an extra $1,200, but that doesn't mean that you actually have an extra $1,200. That means you have your extra rent. And so when you're looking at your financial table, especially before you engage romantically with someone, you do have to build good sound financial habits. You can't be a person who gives just because someone calls. Because if you decide to get into a relationship, a romantic relationship, whether it's live in or married, you can't take money, you can't expect to be single while married with your money. You can't expect to give a certain amount of money every month like you to a person like you did when you were single while you're now married, because the money has to go into the household. And so if you're not ready to um, transition your financial table from single to married, then you would need to reassess whether or not uh, you have the appropriate, financial table for you. Sometimes it could be that you just don't make enough money or something, right? Or sometimes it can be that you don't feel like you should have to share in the finances. Well, that's not going to work when you actually get married, because you are coming together as one. You are engaging and transitioning from engagement to marriage as one, and you have to bridge your finances as one. And so there are only two people in a marriage. Despite what many people say about marriage, there are only two people in a marriage. And so that means you're going to have to set boundaries with family members who have always been able to depend upon you for a few extra dollars when you were single. That is no longer, singlehood is no longer your financial table, or it would no longer be your financial table. Um, the way you spent when you were single, maybe you spent too much money on, credit cards, or you spent too much money on clothes or something like that. I still think you can buy clothes. You may have to choose your battles. So your financial table, whereas you were able to have a budget of $500 a month on clothes just for you as a single individual, that financial table is going to have to change for a person who's married, because then you are sharing the financial load when it comes to clothes. You are sharing the financial load when it comes to bills. You are sharing the financial load when it comes to other types of responsibilities. And then if you add kids on top of that, or if you add any sort of health problems on top of that, then that financial table is going to need to bear that type of weight. So when you're thinking about your financial table, there's a single financial table, there's a single to married financial table, that transition, and then there is a married married to married financial table, meaning that you're already married. And so whatever ideas, thinking that you had prior to that relationship, you're going to have to now really um, bridge what it means to sit at the financial table together. And if you're not ready to do that, then don't engage a relationship. Don't move in with a partner and bridge your finances, and you both are not financially stable. Two financially unstable people do not make one financially stable person. You both need to go through the process of learning about your individual financial tables, what's going on with you individually, why you are not saving money, why you're not making enough money, why you don't have enough money to come together as two married people. You have to look at your own individual respective financial tables before you can now come together as a collective, right? So what is your financial table? So these are the Toxic Encounter books that I mentioned earlier. This is Toxic Encounters, Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships, Part 1. Then Toxic Encounters, Adult Attachment and the Problem with Rebounding, Part 2. And then Toxic Encounters, Why You Should Go No Contact Post Rebounding, Part 3. So this is part of the Overcoming Rebound Relationship curriculum. And these were the three initial books in terms of research where I go over um, rebound relationships, how it relates to adult attachment, and that's why we tend to stay in those types of relationships because we become attached. It's usually an insecure attachment, and you can chart the insecure attachment from your childhood to your adulthood. Then, of course, going no contact. Visit, subscribe, and follow. So this is the standard logo for the Regina White Favors website. And so you can also visit me on Facebook, Arthur Regina White Favors, YouTube, Regina White Favors channel, and then our Amazon Arthur page, amazon.com /Arthur Regina White Favors. Thank you very much for listening.